Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
How are you, by the way? Hope you've had a good Wednesday, midweek, and all of that. Want to mention, of course, we are broadcasting live on the TuneIn app, on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and, of course, alternatecurrentradio.com. Great platforms, check them out. And most importantly, check out davidike.com/headlines for a one-stop shop for all the news you need and the sort of analysis you don't get anywhere else. Bookmark the site. So I'm not going to talk about the vote at Westminster. No point in that. It was expected. It wasn't expected that it would be stopped at that stage, okay? So we'll leave that for now. We will be talking a lot about it in the coming weeks. What I want to talk about for the next 15 minutes or thereabouts is the fake news inquiry. Now, I mentioned yesterday, and I did publish or post an email, word for word, that I sent to Conservative MP Damien Collins. He's the man heading up the fake news inquiry at Westminster. I wrote him an email expressing my concerns about what the inquiry was trying to achieve, and I recommended strongly that David Icke, a man who's been researching and challenging the mainstream version of everything for nearly 30 years successfully, as is being borne out by news stories now and academic journals, that the inquiry could have no credibility if it didn't invite David Icke to give evidence to it. Now, I emailed this yesterday, no response as of now today. That's unacceptable. I've been emailing TDs, that's Choc Tadola in Ireland, for years. I've been emailing MPs in the UK for years. They have secretaries. I have never failed to get a response in less than a couple of hours. We're being ignored. Not acceptable, that. They work for us. But I'm going to leave that there for now. And I just want to talk a little bit about this guy, Damien Collins. Not personally, but about what this fake news inquiry is all about. Now, here's an example for you to listen to. Here's an example of what Damien Collins has been saying about why the inquiry was set up. Incidentally, of course, he was invited to come on this particular programme. This is Collins talking to BBC Breakfast.
So for me, it's when the story is based on a complete fabrication. It's not someone's analysis or opinion of events that have happened. It's a scenario that has been artificially created and is deliberately sensational to help distribute news. And that could be done for profit, for people to make money from paid-for advertising or clicks online, or it could be done for propaganda reasons, to deliberately spread misinformation.
OK, and the next question, I suppose, is how do you think you might be able to stop that?
Well, I think what we have to look at is, I think, giving users online the tools that they need to help them identify sources of news that come from verifiable sources. Now, social media platforms like Twitter have verified users, so the company has checked that that person is who they say they are. I think it'd be interesting to see, could we have verified sources for news online as it's shared? I also think as well, in terms of the rankings and the presentation of news, all news stories sometimes are presented in the same way. So on Google News, for example, there's none of the normal brand trademarks or fonts that you associate with particular news sites. Everything is presented in the same way and with equal weight. So my concern would be, if you get fake news stories from spurious websites mixed in and presented alongside legitimate sources of news, does that give them additional credence? Verified
news sources. How would anybody, and who, importantly, would get to verify whether a news source is credible or not? More on that in a minute. Now, former Facebook executive Elizabeth Linder, she's been saying, now she's a former Facebook executive, remember, that Facebook users could report fake news which could then be submitted to fact checkers determined by Facebook. Listen to what she says.
I think it's important as well to see, how do we actually empower people to report the kind of content that they see online that is fake? All social media companies really do operate on a report and take down model. Because of the scale of how these companies work, you really have to do it that way. Everyone has to be a police officer in this space. And so what are ways in which we can actually use technology to say, if you see something that doesn't look right, please help to report it so that we can actually flag this up to some fact checkers and see what's going on.
So we all become the Facebook police, and when we see something we think isn't true, we tell Facebook about it, and they then submit it to their fact checkers and they take action. Now, there's so much wrong with that, it's untrue. I don't know where to begin. okay? Because you might have a situation where somebody is reporting on a story. Like, say, let's just say David Icke. Obvious to mention David. Could be reporting on a story. That is true. But the person being exposed in the story and being embarrassed might report the story. So who would the fact checkers be then? Who would they be answerable to? Right? I mean, at the moment, I'm not harping on about this because I couldn't give a damn about Facebook. And by the end of the month, I won't be on Facebook. Facebook runs on a report and, how do I say this? A report and it will be taken down basis. You report something, they take it down. We mentioned Sean Adel, the goon, the monumental goon who runs yournewswire.com, complained to Facebook after I posted the Sunday Times article which called Adel a criminal. The article did. Okay? The article alleged that he'd stolen someone's identity. In fact, it went further than alleged. It said he had. And that he was posting using someone's picture without their permission. That's none of my business, right? But I can share that. So what was Facebook's motivation in banning me? Who took the decision? Was it even a person? Did they read the Times article before banning me for 30 days? Again, not that I give a damn, I couldn't care less. David Icke talks about the free flow of information. That's what the internet has done from a positive point of view. A lot of negative things about the internet, but the free flow of information is good. People can access quick and easily sources of news from multiple sources, right? So, to impose any limit on that is tyranny. And we're talking about, and I said this before, and I was accused of exaggerating, we're talking about Orwell's Ministry of Truth. I've always said people should decide for themselves what is true and what isn't true. Let goons and muppets like Adel post stories about the Pope running away, the Queen abdicating and all that garbage. We're clever enough to look at that and go, that's clickbait rubbish, right? Who the hell are the establishment to tell us what should be banned, what should be regarded as fake news and what should be shut down? Ultimately, I believe, the establishment has lost control of the discussion about what's really going on in the world. They have done. They are terrified of it, and something must be done about it. Hence, this whole attack on fake news. What they want to do, I believe, and I've said this to you before, but I think it bears repeating, is to get us back to a place where we're getting our news from the people who told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, people who told us that Iraqi soldiers took babies out of incubators in Kuwait and killed them. That's where they want us getting our news sources from. Assad is using chemical weapons on his people and on children. No evidence, just believe us because we tell you it's so. That's where they want us. And I was thinking today, you know, I have been in the past a student of history. I was thinking long and hard about this today. The media, now none of this is groundbreaking stuff, it's not going to shake your world, you know most of this anyway, but it bears again repeating and talking about today. This media, this press that we are surrounded by, radio, television, has been willfully lying to the public and collaborating with tyrants since Moses was a boy in the bulrushers. And I was examining my memory today, and I was thinking back to when, I wasn't alive. But Benjamin Franklin, yes, the president, remember him, used the media to spread massive lies about Native American people, working with George III, do you remember that? Saying they were murdering patriots and scalping them. Utter bollocks, spread through the US broadsheet press. In the 19th century, newspapers regularly published fake news stories about slaves, plotting uprisings, raping their mistresses, murdering their masters, breaking the law. They used to invent this stuff. They used to just make it up. They had whole rooms full of people doing it. The media, all lies to promote attacks on blacks and encourage harsher treatment of them. That was your media, the fourth estate. Irish listeners will know, the mid-19th century, the famine, fake news. Most people don't know this. Most people do not know this. The potato famine in Ireland, classic example of fake news at the time, with The Observer, among other newspapers in the UK, willingly working with the British establishment to perpetrate a massive hoax on the British people. The potatoes in Ireland failed because of a blight, right? Right? The potatoes failed, the Irish starved, and that led to mass emigration. That's what happened, right? No, it didn't quite happen that way. The British Empire's army, half of their entire army was in Ireland at the time. Over 100,000 soldiers. Why? To take food by force. My country, people were robbed. Their food was robbed. Up to 50, 60 ships a day were taken out of the country, assisted by the peelers, which were the British police in Ireland, the constables, by the militia, by the troops, were stealing livestock, poultry, flour, crops, everything they could get their hands on, shipping it over to the UK. Food that would have fed 18 million people, 5 times the population of Ireland then. The British press knew about it, told a pack of lies to their own people and to the world about the famine. George Bernard Shaw, I believe, once wrote, "The famine knows the starvation. When a country is full of food and exporting it, there can't be a famine." Fake news, fake news, fake news. The media knew about it and spread fake news. They continue to do it today. The media in the United States buried stories and censored journalists who wanted to expose the bankers, the billionaires and the industrialists in the US who funded Hitler. Fake news. Fake news, fake news, fake news. Stories were buried. People were killed even. And people were fired. Fleet Street editors and owners of Fleet Street newspapers knew or suspected that paedophilia was rampant at Westminster. Editors knew about Edward Heath. They knew about Edward Heath. It was David Icke who had the balls, eventually. I don't mean David grew balls eventually. He's always had balls. David was the first person to expose Edward Heath in the biggest secret while he was still alive. But the establishment media knew what Heath was doing. They knew about Jimmy Savile. But they spread fake news that he was a philanthropist and a saint who raised money for the sick, and they knew who he really was, dear listener. They knew all about him. Fake news and fake videos were used by the media to scare people about Osama bin Laden, even though the same lying, whoring media knew that he died in late 2001. They knew he had nothing to do with 9/11. They knew he was nearly dead. Yet they ran story after story after story with videos of Osama bin Laden. And in each video, dear listener, he looked completely different from the previous video. Figure that one out. Fake news. Fake news. Fake news. BBC said Building 7 has collapsed even though it was still standing behind a female reporter in New York City. Well, it looks all right to me. What about the pre-referendum take on economical Armageddon and a winter of poverty if we left the European Union? Fake news, totally unchallenged. You know the problem here, while they're talking about going after researchers whom, as I said, extremely politely and professionally to Damien Collins yesterday, researchers talking about central banking conspiracies, the creation of money, Zionism, false flag terrorism, the arming of jihadists, and claiming that they are crazy terrorists who want to kill us all. These are the people they want to shut down, not Sean Adel and fools like him and beforeitsnews.com and all the other garbage that's out there, which doesn't do any harm. Right, they might make a few bob out of it. Good luck to them. People are stupid enough to read it and click on their sites and generate revenue. Good luck to them. You know the real problem here? The real problem, the one we should be addressing. But again, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, so we'll never talk about it. In the United States alone, 90% of everything you read in the US, in a magazine or a newspaper, everything you watch on TV or in the cinema, everything you listen to on the radio, the apps on your phone, everything you see on a billboard or on a train or on a plane or on a bus is given to you by, you ready? Drum roll, Comcast, Disney, News Corporation, Time Warner, Viacom and CBS. deregulation, filthy, whoring, stealing, psychotic politicians allowed these companies to take over everything you see, you hear, you read, you touch. In the UK, it's Murdoch, it's the BBC, Trinity Mirror, Richard Desmond. And I'm talking to you on the radio now, through the medium of radio. In this country, radio is dominated by Global Radio and by Bauer, who now own pretty much every commercial station in every city in the United Kingdom. These stations used to be owned by businessmen, didn't they? We knew who owned the radio stations. We knew them. Businessmen and businesswomen. They made a living out of that revenue, but importantly, they largely left the editorial and the news content to the journalists. That's what used to happen. Now, they're owned by Global Radio and Bauer. And you're told the biggest threat to democracy is a cretin in Los Angeles, a muppet who can barely tie his own shoes, called Sean Adel. A celebrity wannabe, a nobody who publishes stories like Elvis is my grandmother and aliens live in my attic. This dunce, we're being told, is a threat to democracy. Of course, they don't believe that. It's David Icke they want, and people like David Icke. If the inquiry into fake news doesn't invite David Icke to come and give evidence to them, even if he's asked a few hostile questions, it's a farce. An utter farce. What we have now is an attempt to bring in the Ministry of Truth. Are we going to see a situation where independent researchers have to submit their work to the state, or an agency of the state who decides if those stories are true? Is that where we're going to go? And are we going to allow that? Is that where we're going with it?